From character costume choices, subtle scores, potential plot holes, and the fact that Wong showed exactly how to defeat Thanos before the movie ever got out of its first act, it is utterly impossible to catch everything that the Russo brothers built into what is one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. But we caught 19 things you probably didn't. So I am Gareth here from WhatCulture.com, and here are 19 things you somehow missed in Avengers Infinity War. Number 19, the reaction of Doctor Strange's cloak. In Infinity War, Doctor Strange's trusty cloak slapped Tony Stark's hand away from the cauldron of the cosmos. But there was a whole joke made of this. You could not miss it. What was more subtle was the cloak's reaction to a conversation between Tony Stark and Peter Parker. When Spider-Man revealed himself to still be on board Thanos' ship, he actually suggested that it was Tony's fault. It doesn't seem possible, but somehow the cloak pulled exactly the same shocked expression as Tony in that moment. And it is too damn funny not to acknowledge. Number 18, NATASHA'S vest. Whether it's an integral part of their comic book lore, a cool little Easter egg, or a tie-in to their history, what a character wears is far more than just clothing. This is incredibly true for Natasha in Infinity War, and the vest that she wears throughout. It wasn't until Black Widow finally came out 2 years later that the true meaning of this vest was explored. This was the first thing Yelena truly bought and owned for herself after a life of slavery in the Red Room, and she was desperate for her sister's approval. At the end of the movie, Yelena gave Natasha the vest as something of a memento as they went their separate ways, and a rewatch of Infinity War shows just how much that meant to poor old Black Widow. Number 17, Peter's reaction to Star-Lord. One of the most anticipated moments in the build-up to Infinity War was the Avengers finally crossing paths with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and the dynamic between Peter Quill, Drax and Mantis, Tony Stark, Peter Parker and Doctor Strange was arguably unparalleled across the rest of the movie. This scene is likely most remembered for Drax's now infamous "Why is Gamora" line. But there is one of more subtlety in which both Quill and Parker shine. This comes when Quill has his arm around Parker's throat and is explaining who Thor is. His obvious jealousy gets the better of him, as he describes the God of Thunder as not that good looking. Peter Parker's visible confusion is the perfect balance of funny and relatable, as this is likely the face just about every fan watching would have made too, because Chris Hemsworth is bloody stunning. Number 16, Tony Stark's pop culture references. Peter Parker loves his movies and used the likes of Star Wars and Aliens to help defeat Giant Man and Ebony Maw. But after he referenced an alien coming out of his chest in Infinity War, his father figure Tony told him he wanted no more pop culture references for the entire trip. This, however, is something that Tony does all the damn time. From calling Thor Point Break to calling Star-Lord Flash Gordon even after forbidding this exact kind of reference from Peter, Tony constantly broke his own rules. Number 15, Bruce doesn't get what he wants. Way back when Natasha first recruited Bruce Banner to help find the Tesseract, he threatened that the other guy making an appearance was a real possibility. Nat suggested that Bruce wouldn't want that, to which he replied that he didn't always get what he wanted. Fast forward a few years and Bruce finds himself back on Earth after the Hulk had his butt kicked by Thanos. This time, Tony asks him if he wants to fight Cull Obsidian and Ebony Maw on the streets of New York, to which he answers no, but when does he ever get what he wants? Bruce Banner went through so much between the ends of the Avengers and Infinity War, but nothing really changed for him, to be honest. He was still cursed with the Hulk, at least until he figured out how to put the brains and the brawn together. Number 14, Loki's left hand. Death was never anything permanent for the good old god of mischief, until his neck was snapped by Thanos, of course. Even Thor had to admit that this death felt pretty final, and based on what Loki was shown at the TVA, this was the character's true end. And yet even now there are details that would allow fans to question what they saw. When Loki went for Thanos' throat with his dagger, he held the blade with his left hand. This could be potentially telling, as the only other time in MCU history he used his left as his dominant hand was when he was a projection in the Dark World. Could this mean that the Loki Thanos killed was a projection? Or was this just an oversight in the filmmaking process with absolutely no hidden meaning whatsoever? I'll let you decide. Number 13, how strong were Stan Lee's shears? The scope of this MCU franchise is simply too big to keep track of every single detail and avoid certain plot holes and contradictions. In Infinity War on Nidavellir, to ensure the forge stayed open long enough for Eitri to produce Stormbreaker, Thor took on the full force of the dying star. His skin blistered and he eventually lost consciousness. His hair, however, was completely untouched and exactly as it was before. So Thor has a pretty strong follicle game. So how then was Stan Lee's character able to cut his hair so easily in Thor Ragnarok? What were those shears made of? Number 12, Wanda can just feel vision. From the first time their eyes met in Sokovia during Avengers Age of Ultron, Wanda Maximoff and Vision were barreling toward the relationship that fans of the source material knew so well. Their friendship blossomed more so during Civil War, and by Infinity War they were in love. Their introduction in the movie came as they stole away for their moments together in Edinburgh, and with the Mind Stone troubling the former Jarvis, he asked Wanda to tell him what she felt. Her answer was touching, that she just felt him. She just saw Vision as Vision. This simple line makes one particular scene in WandaVision all the more heartbreaking. Inside Sword HQ, in front of Vision's corpse, so to speak, she tried once again to connect to him, but she couldn't. And the fact that she could no longer feel Vision was set up by this conversation 3 years earlier. I need a damn tissue over here. Number 11 is Thanos a liar? When Thanos confessed to the Avengers that he used the stones to destroy the stones, they didn't believe him until Nebula interjected. Her father was many things, but a liar was not one of them. But did Thanos actually fib about something else during his quest? When trying to justify his actions, particularly those of when he slaughtered half of Gamora's people, he told his favorite daughter that since that day the people of Zen-Waberi had known nothing but blue skies and full bellies. However, when Gamora is arrested on Xandar in Guardians of the Galaxy, her profile clearly states that she is the last of her kind. Either Thanos is wrong or the Nova Corps are wrong, but which is it? Thanos told Gamora that she was a bad liar because he never taught her how to lie. There's two potential meanings to this. Is he saying that he didn't teach her to lie because he doesn't lie himself? Or is he saying that if he did teach her to lie, she would be good at it because he is? So many questions. Number 10, what was Hulk waiting for? The opening few minutes to Infinity War are among the most tense in the history of the MCU. The Mad Titan, fully aware of the God of Mischief's tendency towards said mischief, knew that he had the Tesseract, but Loki was able to stall just long enough for his help to arrive. Almost completing Loki's redemption arc with a single phrase, he let Thanos know that he had a Hulk. The Hulk then came out of nowhere and savagely attacked Thanos. The fact that he was ultimately beaten without his opponent really breaking a sweat is irrelevant. The point is that the Hulk was completely up for the fight at the beginning. So the question remains, what was he doing while Thanos was laying waste to the innocent Asgardians? Was he just waiting patiently for Loki to give him a killer entrance? If so, I kinda get it. Number 9, a first Avenger callback. One of the defining moments of any character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was when Steve Rogers made the choice to sacrifice himself to save New York. His final conversation with Peggy Carter until they reunited over 70 years later was utterly devastating. Never to be outdone, Tony Stark went through something relatively similar at the beginning of Infinity War. After promising Pepper that there would be no more surprises, he was forced to call her from an alien spaceship on its way to another planet to say he would miss dinner. Granted, he wasn't away from Pepper for 70 years, Tony was ready to make that sacrifice, however, and the parallel of these two scenes was there to hear for anyone willing to listen. In much the same way the same music was played when both Gamora and Natasha died on Vormir, Alan Silvestri's score from Captain America's Moment of Sacrifice was played once again for Iron Man's. Number 8, Thor speaks Groot. If you think about it, the fact that Thor learned the Groot language as an elective on Asgard, paired with a scene from Guardians of the Galaxy, raises a lot of questions about Groot, his history, and his race. That the language is taught anywhere at all suggests that Groot is not the only one of his species. Asgard wouldn't teach an entire language to its children on the off chance they ran into this one tree that likely wasn't even born at the time. So Groot is a race stretching back far enough in the annals of history that Thor learned the language as a kid. If this makes you think that there is a planet of Groots out there somewhere, however, then think again. When the Guardians visited Nowhere, the Collector had absolutely no idea what Groot was, and offered to purchase his carcass at the moment of his death. Lovely. Would someone like Tenalir Tivan do this if there was a whole planet of Groots out there? So what happened to Groot's race, why have they seemingly fallen out of memory, and how is Groot the lone survivor? All questions that might be answered at some point down the road, eh? Number 7, the worst year of Thor's life. Starting way back in 2008, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is now in its 15th year. It may seem like a lifetime, and for the likes of Tony Stark and the majority of the MCU heroes, it has been a big chunk of their lives. Not for Thor, however. The God of Thunder confirmed in Infinity War that he is over 1,500 years old, which surely means he experienced the Infinity Saga differently to everyone else. Between Thor first being cast out of Asgard and landing on Midgard in 2011, to taking on Thanos in the Battle of Earth in 2023, there was was a gap of 12 years. To a being that is 1,500 years old, that is less than 1% of his lifespan. If you translate that to the lifespan of someone with a life expectancy of 80 years, let's say, this is like a normal human going through everything Thor went through, everyone he loves dying, over roughly 7 or 8 months. Worst year ever. Number 6, Bruce shouldn't have remembered Thanos. With his last act of defiance against Thanos, Heimdall sent the Hulk back to Earth, directly through the roof of the Sanctum Sanctorum. The moment he crashed through the stairs and declared to Doctor Strange that Thanos is coming is wonderfully comic accurate. Of course, with Banner being substituted in for the Silver Surfer, but there is what seems to be a big mistake in that moment. Namely, Bruce shouldn't have had a clue what was going on. In Thor Ragnarok, the Hulk took over Bruce's mind for 2 whole years. And yet when Bruce finally got his hands back on the wheel, he thought the Avengers were still fighting Ultron. There was absolutely no recollection of what happened on Sakaar. Taking that rule into account then, Bruce should have also had no knowledge of Thanos. How strange. Number 5, Rocket didn't fight Thanos. Rocket Raccoon knew that Gamora was Thanos' daughter, and had heard what happened to Drax's family on the Mad Titan's orders, all of which was hit home even harder when Thor boarded the Benatar. He may have put on a tough facade, but the usually confident and sure of himself Rocket was scared of Thanos. As well he should have been. He chose to go to Nidavellir with Thor and Groot while everyone else raced to nowhere. And Quill pretty much got it right when he said he was actively going where Thanos wasn't. Also, in Wakanda when Thanos landed, every single hero individually threw themselves at the alien invader, even the unpowered likes of Sam, Bucky and Nat. Rocket, however, was the only one who kept his distance, something that is incredibly telling. Number 4, bloodstains on Vormir. Though half of all living creatures were killed by Thanos at the end of Avengers Infinity War, there were 3 deaths that were much more permanent. Sure, all 3 characters will have appeared again in the MCU by the time Guardians 3 releases, but as different versions of themselves. Along with the deaths of Loki and Vision, Gamora's demise was much more final. In order to gain the Soul Stone, Thanos had to sacrifice that which he loved, and so without hesitation hurled his favourite daughter over the edge of the cliffs of Vormir to her death. As the shot zooms in on Gamora's body, naturally she takes all the focus, making the bloodstains dotted about her easy to miss. So it would appear that there were people who did know where the Soul Stone was before Thanos, and they tried to procure it from the Red Skull. However, by the time Thanos got to Vormir, the stone was still there. The most obvious explanation, and it's a dark one, is that a stone seeker sacrificed someone that they didn't truly love. That is awkward. Number 3, a huge omission from Doctor Strange's list. It felt as though Doctor Strange went from complete newbie to master of the mystic arts in absolutely no time at all. Though it's unclear exactly over how long the events of his first solo movie stretched, by the point of the first post-credit scene he was at the head of the New York Sanctum. In this scene he brought Thor to him to ask about Loki, and why he had been brought to Earth. Strange had compiled a list of otherworldly threats, and Loki's name was, in Thor's own words, a worthy inclusion. Doctor Strange's jurisdiction from this time stretched across the universe, and if Loki and other alien beings were on this list, then why wasn't Thanos? When Bruce told Steven and Wong that Thanos was coming, Strange responded with who? Realistically, his response should have been, oh crap, it's happening. Wong, assemble the sorcerers from Hong Kong and London. Let's protect the time stone and kick this purple a-hole back into space. But that of course did not happen. Number 2, how to de-gauntlet Thanos. On Titan, the plan was not to try and kill Thanos, but instead to remove the gauntlet from his hand. Without something like Stormbreaker, killing Thanos was off the table, but if they could separate him from the stones, they may have had a chance. It took a flawless coordinated plan to even get close to getting the gauntlet from Thanos' hand, and it would have worked if not for Quill losing it. However, there was a much simpler way the heroes could have taken the gauntlet for themselves, so simple in fact that it had already been done to another character in the same movie. During Cull Obsidian and Ebony Mawr's attack on the Sanctum Sanctorum, a perfectly placed sling ring portal from Wong sliced Obsidian's hand clean off with absolutely no effort. Would this not have been at least worth a try from Doctor Strange on Titan? The answer is yes, you silly sausage. Number 1, Dust and Blood. Foreshadowing is a fantastic storytelling tool. On a rewatch, however, you can truly appreciate the genius and the nuance of it. This was used to perfection in Avengers Infinity War just as the Battle of Wakanda was about to begin. Before the Outriders started throwing themselves at the barriers, Cap, Black Widow and T'Challa conversed with Proxima Midnight. The typical threats were thrown back and forth until T'Challa said something rather ominous and telling, though you would not have known it at the time. He promised the member of Thanos' Black Order that her leader would find nothing in Wakanda but dust and blood. There was more than a little blood shed from both sides of the battle, but then came the damn dust. Thanos snapped his fingers and proved T'Challa's words true. And stunned silence played out in theaters all around the world. And that is our list. Know of any other things that people somehow missed in Avengers Infinity War? Then why not let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button while you're at it. Also, if you're into this sort of avenging stuff, then please head on over to whatculture.com and find some more fantastic articles just like the one this video you're watching right this second is based on. I've been Earth's Mightiest Gareth from whatculture.com. Thank you very much for watching today. Hopefully I'll see your pretty faces rather soon, but in the meantime, just be good to yourself. Bye bye!